This spring decor is created using a margarita glass and a round floral foam, both of which are available from Dollar Tree. Hope you enjoy the short video. My Dollar Tree doesn't really have too many great items. I'm in a small area in Idaho, and usually it's on the shallow end of craft supplies there. But when I was walking through the glassware, I was really surprised to see the margarita glass because it was extra thick and seemed to be of a much higher quality. When I picked it up and looked at it, it actually reminded me of a bird fountain, like a water fountain, where they bathe in, and of course it was glass. But it reminded me of a bird fountain that I had seen on an abandoned property back when I was a little girl. And it was one of those where it had been painted white, and it was probably iron, and it had all grungy and murky inside of it, but the outside, the paint had started to peel, and the white paint was all chipped off, and it was starting to get that patina look. It was covered in dirt from who knows how many rainstorms, and it had some moss growing on it and vines growing on it. And I just remember as a little girl thinking it just looked like a place that fairies would go, and just how magical it was. Toward the end of the video, I've posted some pictures that shows the steps that I took to get the margarita glass to look like this, in case it's something you'd like to try on your own. The first step I took was to take the glass and simply paint it with white gesso using a sponge or a sponge brush, and just dab it so it has a little texture to it. That way, whenever you go to apply the chalk paints to make it look all dirty and grungy, it'll have some tooth to stick to it. After I painted the glass white, I then took the Waverly chalk paint in two colors, Elephant and Mineral, and started off, I just barely dabbed a little around the edges and across little splotches here and there, not in sweeping motions and not with a paintbrush, but more with a sponge and a dab motion. Some of the Elephant, and then after it sort of dried a little bit, I squirted it with a little water to get some of it off, and then dabbed some of the mineral color on it. And as it dried, I would start to scrape just little tiny areas. Since the tiny areas made it look too clear, I painted the inside of the margarita glass in the elephant color and the bottom of the handle elephant as well. And then I scraped the areas that I wanted some, I guess, a little light refraction to go through. And whenever you look at it through those little pieces where the paint is scratched off, it looks sort of cool where the elephant color is shining through. I did have some robin's eggs in my craft stash. They're about 1 inch around, but if you don't have those, you could always just make some out of clay or out of some air dry clay, anything like that. Or even if you do the cold porcelain, which is simply just baking soda, water, and there's plenty of recipes of that on YouTube by just looking up cold porcelain recipes. Heck, you could even use Play-Doh and just let it dry and then paint it whatever color you want, since it's for spring decor. The nest itself is just raffia that I've torn up in little pieces, and then moss, and you can get plenty of the moss from your Dollar Tree as well, or you can get some from, I think some of the Walmarts carry them, but Hobby Lobby's, Joann's, Michael's carries all kinds of dried moss. The white pieces is baby's breath, dried baby's breath, and I've had a huge piece of baby's breath that I have had for years and years, and it stays together pretty good as long as I can, keep the kitty cats out of it and keep it closed up in a bag. But everything else is just pretty much easily available online. The bird feathers I did get from eBay, but you can get those anywhere. And if you do happen to come across a feather or two out in your yard, just spritz them with some steamed water to help sanitize them. And, not spritz them with steam water, but hold them over some steam water. Or, if they already look good, just stuff them in there. Here's a quick picture of the margarita glass after I had dabbed the white gesso all over it. So you can just see how I covered it over really good with a solid coat. Here's the result after I dabbed on some more of the Waverly Elephant and Mineral colored chalk paints, and I had also taken a little bit of green paint, sort of a mossy green paint, and watered it down and just barely dabbed it in a few areas. For the creeping moss that goes up the little goblet, you can take any type of herb. In this case I used parsley. You can use cilantro, oregano, any color that you like, and just grind it up. If you don't have a mortar and pestle like I do in this little picture, just use the back of a spoon and smash it up to a fine powder. Take your glue. I used a fine tip art glitter glue, made the lines that I wanted, and then sprinkle the powdered herb on top of it till you have the mossy lines that you want, and also dab it around the tips of the glass. I waited until I had got the moss in before I applied it near the top of the glass. For the brown vine, just take some jute twine and just roll it between your fingers so you can separate the strands. And then do the same thing, apply it with art glitter glue. Don't forget to paint the inside of your goblet and the bottom of your goblet with the darker color of your chalk paint. In this case, like I said, I used the Elephant Waverly chalk paint. Before you move to this next step, where you measure out your foam circle and cut it to fit inside your glass. You should have like a crescent shape left that you can use on another project, and then hot glue it into the bottom of your goblet. I then took a more stringy-ish moss, I guess is what you call it, or a loose moss, and used a bone folder and hot glued it down inside the edges of my glass, just into a thin rim. Did the first circle in the loose moss. Then I took a ring of reindeer moss, and it comes in a variety of colors. In this case, I just used sort of a sage green, and I hot glued it. I put the glue onto the moss and then pressed the moss onto the foam. If you put the hot glue onto the foam first, you'll melt your foam. And then made a second ring. Inside of that, I just took some raffia, or you could take some straw or any kind of just natural looking fibers or anything that you have, and form a nest shape and put that in the very center. Put your eggs in that, stick some baby's breath or some other florals or whatever you wish around the edges. In this case, I used some feathers and some baby's breath, and there you have it. You have your perfect little margarita glass robin's nest for spring. Thanks so much for watching. I'm hoping to make more videos in the future, and I'm just learning how to start using video software and editing software, that kind of thing, so please bear with me, and thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe.